The relentless city rain, a cold, indifferent curtain, hammered against the streets of Chicago, blurring the edges of a world far too accustomed to looking away. For Marcus Washington, time was not just ticking, it was galloping, each second a precious commodity. 23 minutes. That was all that remained on the clock before the Callaway Scholarship, his solitary beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness of poverty, would vanish forever. 3 blocks, a mere stretch of concrete and aspiration, lay between him and salvation. His mother's voice, a persistent, loving echo, whispered in his mind, "You get one shot at breaking out, baby. Don't waste it." He had one shot, and the scholarship office was agonizingly close. But then he saw her. An elderly woman, a silhouette of vulnerability, stood abandoned in the downpour. Her expensive cashmere coat, once a shield against the chill, now darkened with the rain, clinging to her frail frame. A crimson trickle, a stark punctuation mark, meandered down her forehead. 3 businessmen, polished and impervious, sidestepped her without breaking their stride, their gazes fixed on some distant, self-important horizon. A woman engrossed in her phone deftly changed course, her avoidance a practiced ballet. The old woman reached for a lamppost, her hand missing its mark, and swayed dangerously. Marcus checked his phone. 22 minutes. The scholarship, his future, was slipping away. "Please, can someone help me find Calvert Tower?" Her voice, thin and trembling, pierced through the din. "My grandson is waiting." A suited executive, rushing past, bumped her pas-de-counter shoulder. Oblivious, and she stumbled. In that split second, Marcus made his choice. It was an instinctual lunge, a selfless act, born of a compassion that ran deeper than any personal ambition. He caught her just before she hit the unforgiving concrete, but the cost was immediate and brutal. His meticulously prepared portfolio, a testament to months of arduous work, crashed into a deep puddle. Ink bloomed across the papers, vibrant dreams dissolving into the dirty, swirling water. "Thank you, young man," she murmured, her blue eyes, despite their earlier confusion, suddenly piercingly clear. "I seem to have lost my way." As if summoned by fate, a security guard materialized, his hand hovering near his weapon. His gaze, laced with suspicion, flicked between Marcus's dark skin and the wealthy white woman cradled in his arms. The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the rain-filled air. "Step away from the lady," the guard demanded, his voice laced with an authority that bordered on menace. "She needs medical attention," Marcus countered, his own voice steady, unwavering. "And respect. Something you people seem fresh out of today." The guard reached for his radio. 19 minutes. The ruined application lay in soggy fragments on the sidewalk. Marcus made a second choice, as costly as the first. He didn't run. Some things he knew mattered more than scholarships. Some things mattered more than personal glory. Marcus's world was a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Southside Chicago. It was a world woven from the threads of Loretta, his mother, a hospital custodian who chased double shifts to keep the family afloat. Elise, his grandmother, battling the insidious fog of early-stage dementia. And Zora, his 12-year-old sister, a brilliant science prodigy whose mind sparkled with the promise of a brighter future. 6 years ago, his father had been stolen by a construction accident, leaving an aching void. His older brother, Deon, was currently serving time for a minor drug charge that, through some cruel twist of fate and systemic injustice, had been escalated to a felony. Each morning, before dawn could fully break, Marcus rose at 5 a.m. to help Grandma Elise with her medications, a ritual of love and patience. Then 2 buses would carry him across the city, from the grit of the South Side to the polished halls of Westridge Academy, an elite private school where he was one of only 7 black students. He had earned his place through sheer academic force, a competitive program a ladder out of his circumstances. Yet the air was thick with daily microaggressions, subtle slights that chipped away at his spirit. Mr. Harrington, the college counselor, a man whose assumptions were barely disguised, would offer platitudes like, "Harvard might be a stretch, Washington. Have you considered community college? Nothing wrong with working with your hands." This, despite Marcus maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA while toiling away weekends at a grocery store. Today was meant to be the crescendo of his meticulous planning, the Callaway Foundation Scholarship, $250,000, a full ride to Harvard. His destiny. Months had been poured into perfecting his application, including a deeply personal essay about his grandmother's cognitive decline and the stark disparities in care she received. Now, as he guided the elderly woman into a nearby cafe, the security guard's suspicious gaze a palpable weight on his back, Marcus fought a rising tide of panic. The application, his golden ticket, was ruined. The deadline would pass, sacrificed for a stranger's safety. Inside the cafe, the barista, her eyes darting between Marcus and the elegantly dressed woman, addressed only the latter. "Can I help you?" The old woman's voice, though frail, held a surprising steel. "This young man is helping me. I seem to have gotten lost, and he's the only person who stopped. I think I hit my head when my driver didn't show." Marcus helped her to a table, the warmth of the cafe a stark contrast to the cold rain outside. "My name is Marcus," he finally introduced himself. "I'm Margaret Callaway," she responded, dabbing at her forehead with a napkin. Marcus froze. "Callaway, as in the Callaway Foundation." Margaret nodded. "My late husband founded it. I serve as chairperson emeritus, though my grandson handles most operations now." The irony was a crushing weight. He was missing his Callaway scholarship deadline to help Margaret Callaway herself. When he haltingly explained his predicament, Margaret, her earlier confusion now fully replaced by a sharp lucidity, insisted on calling her grandson, Bradford, to extend the deadline. Marcus could hear Bradford's voice, loud and dismissive through the phone. "Grandmother, we can't make exceptions." It undermines the integrity of the selection process. Besides, if he can't meet a simple deadline, he's hardly Harvard material. Marcus's heart plummeted as Margaret hung up. "I'm so sorry, dear." Bradford can be rigid. "No need, Mrs. Callaway," Marcus said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "My mom raised me to help people who need it." Outside the cafe window, his scholarship application pages, scattered by the wind, were dissolving into puddles, 4 years of relentless effort washing away. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother, a simple, hopeful query. "How did it go, baby? Did you submit it on time?" As Marcus helped Margaret into a taxi bound for her grandson's office, a police cruiser pulled to the curb. 2 officers stepped out, their presence a familiar, unwelcome intrusion. "Is this kid bothering you, Mom?" the first officer asked, his hand resting conspicuously on his holster. Before Marcus could speak, Margaret drew herself up with an astonishing authority, her voice resonating with indignation. "This young man saved me when dozens walked past. He missed an important appointment to ensure my safety, and now you're harassing him instead of thanking him. Your badge numbers, please." The officers, taken aback, quickly backpedaled, but the damage was done. Marcus felt the familiar, heavy cloak of being viewed as a threat first, a person second. It was a narrative all too common, a script already written for young men like him. As the taxi pulled away, Margaret handed Marcus her business card, her personal number scrawled on the back. "This isn't over, Marcus Washington. I pay my debts." But Marcus knew better than to hope. People like the Callaways, he understood, might offer platitudes, but they rarely upended their meticulously constructed systems for someone like him. He walked to the bus stop in the rain, the chill seeping into his bones, wrestling with how to tell his family that their shared dream, their fragile hope, had just washed away because he chose kindness over ambition. That evening, he sat at their small kitchen table, the spicy aroma of his mother's famous jambalaya, a recipe passed down from his Louisiana grandmother, filling the apartment. The comforting scent, usually a balm, couldn't soothe the gnawing emptiness inside him. "You did the right thing," Loretta said gently, after he recounted the day's events. "That woman needed help." "The right thing cost us everything, Mom," he whispered, the words thick with despair. She set down her wooden spoon, her hands, calloused from years of hard work, cupped his face. "Listen to me. Your father and I didn't raise you to walk past someone in trouble because helping them might be inconvenient. That scholarship would have opened doors, yes, but sacrificing who you are to get those opportunities, that cost is too high." Marcus nodded, but the weight settled on his shoulders, an unbearable burden. Tomorrow, he would have to recalibrate his entire future, reshape his very destiny, based on one moment of kindness that the world seemed determined to punish. 2 weeks bled into silence. Marcus heard nothing from Margaret Calloway. The foundation announced its scholarship recipients, the list conspicuously devoid of his name. His mother, a master of stoicism, tried to hide her disappointment, but Marcus caught her crying in the kitchen late one night, her quiet sobs a testament to their shattered hopes. "It's okay, Mom," he comforted her, though his own heart was a hollow drum. "I can still go to state with partial aid. I'll work and take loans for the rest." Loretta wiped her eyes, her voice choked. "You deserved better, baby." At school, Mr. Harrington's smugness was unbearable, a thinly veiled triumph. Sometimes these elite schools just aren't meant to be, Washington. No shame in setting more realistic goals. When Marcus returned home that afternoon, a certified letter lay waiting. Harvard University, his dream, had rejected his application despite his perfect academics. The reason cited, a character assessment from Westridge Academy, detailing concerns about his reliability and commitment. Marcus knew, with a sickening certainty, exactly who had authored that assessment. Mr. Harrington, the man who had never believed a kid from the South Side belonged at Harvard. That evening, Grandma Elise suffered a particularly bad episode, her dementia clouding her mind, making her forget who he was, her fear escalating into screams. When he tried to help her with her medication, her cries brought their neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, knocking with her baseball bat, eyeing Marcus with suspicion, despite having known him his entire life. "Everything okay in there, Loretta?" she called out, her tone implying otherwise. "It's fine," Marcus said quietly, the exhaustion seeping into his bones. "Grandma's just having a rough night." The next day, another blow. The grocery store where he worked part-time was closing. Mr. Chen, the owner, apologized profusely, explaining that a luxury condo developer had bought the entire block. "They're giving us 30 days. I'm sorry, Marcus. With college funding in jeopardy and now his income gone," Marcus felt the walls of his precarious world closing in. His friend Jamal, seeing his desperation, suggested an alternative: quick money helping his cousin move packages across town. The same kind of work that had landed his brother, Dayon, in prison. "It's just delivery, man." $500 a weekend. Nobody checks what's in the bags. Marcus declined, but the insidious seed of desperation had been planted. At dinner, his sister Zora excitedly waved her acceptance to a prestigious summer science program at MIT. "It's all expenses paid," she exclaimed, then faltered. "Except we need to cover the flight to Boston." Loretta's face fell. "Baby, with Marcus's scholarship falling through and me picking up extra shifts to cover Grandma's new medication, I don't know if we can swing a plane ticket right now." Zora forced a brittle smile. "It's okay, Mom. Maybe next year." Later that night, Marcus stared at Jamal's text, the offer still open. 1 weekend equals Zora's plane ticket. Just saying. The next morning delivered another cruel twist. Their landlord stopped Marcus in the hallway, an eviction warning in hand. "Your mother's late again, kid. I've been patient because you're good tenants, but the new management company doesn't care about that. They want everyone out so they can renovate and double the rent." At school, Marcus discovered his locker had been vandalized, a racial slur scrawled across its surface. When he reported it to the administration, the vice principal sighed, dismissing his plea. "Without witnesses, there's nothing we can do. Perhaps you misremembered your combination, and someone became frustrated, trying to open what they thought was their locker." Marcus clenched his jaw. "It's my locker. My name is on the assignment sheet, and that's not a word someone uses out of frustration." The vice principal shuffled papers, her voice dripping with condescension. "Let's not make mountains out of molehills, Mr. Washington. You're graduating in a few weeks anyway." Walking home that afternoon, Marcus passed Calvert Tower, the very building Margaret Calloway had been trying to find. On impulse, a flicker of something stubborn and defiant, he entered the lobby, but was immediately stopped by security. "Can I help you?" The guard's tone, heavy with condescension, made it clear that help was not on offer. "I'm here to see Mrs. Margaret Calloway." The guard smirked. "Sure you are, kid." "Mrs. Calloway doesn't take unscheduled visitors, especially not—" He stopped himself, but the meaning was clear, a familiar sting for Marcus. As Marcus turned to leave, he spotted Bradford Calloway, Margaret's grandson, whom he recognized from the Foundation's website, entering with an entourage of suits. Marcus approached quickly before security could intercept him. "Mr. Calloway, I'm Marcus Washington. I helped your grandmother when she was lost downtown a few weeks ago. I just wanted to know if she's doing okay." Bradford barely glanced at him, his expression one of polite disdain. "Ah, yes. The scholarship applicant. Grandmother mentioned you." "She's fine, thank you. Security, please escort this young man out." As the guards grabbed Marcus's arms, Bradford added, "For what it's worth, your application was never in serious contention. The Calloway Scholarship is intended for exceptional candidates who demonstrate more than just basic decency." Marcus was escorted to the sidewalk, humiliation burning in his chest. Through the glass doors, he watched Bradford laugh with his associates, the sound a bitter echo in the bustling city. That night, Marcus's phone rang with an unknown number. It was Margaret Calloway herself. "Marcus, I've been trying to reach you." I sent cards, emails. Bradford assured me he was handling it. "Are you avoiding me, dear?" Marcus's confusion was genuine. "Mrs. Calloway, I never received anything from you or the Foundation except my rejection letter." A long silence followed, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. "I see," Margaret finally said, her voice tight with anger, the steel he'd glimpsed in the cafe now evident. "It seems my grandson has been managing more than just the Foundation's day-to-day operations. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow, Marcus. There are things we need to discuss." The next day, Marcus helped his mother prepare for her second shift. As he fixed her lunch, jerk chicken with rice, her favorite, he debated whether to tell her about Margaret's call. "Something on your mind, baby?" Loretta asked, noticing his distraction. "Just thinking about bills," he lied, unwilling to give her false hope that could be so easily snatched away. After she left for work, Marcus headed to Bronzeville to meet his brother's parole officer, who needed character statements for Dion's upcoming hearing. The officer, a white man who had likely never set foot in their neighborhood before, was an hour late. "Family support is critical," the officer said mechanically when he finally arrived, not looking up from his clipboard. "But with your brother's record, I wouldn't get your hopes up about early release." Marcus bit back his response, the unspoken truth that Dion's record, a first-time offense, would have been a misdemeanor if he'd been white or wealthy, burning in his throat. Instead, he silently filled out the forms, knowing any show of frustration would only hurt his brother's already slim chances. On his way to meet Margaret, Marcus passed the Calloway Foundation's community center in Hyde Park, a gleaming building with the motto, "Opening doors through education," etched in its facade. The irony was a sharp, bitter taste. The institution created to help students like him had become another barrier, another system designed to look charitable while maintaining a rigid status quo. Margaret waited for him at an upscale cafe near Calvert Tower. She was transformed from the disoriented woman he had helped, elegantly dressed, sharp-eyed, radiating an unmistakable aura of authority. "I owe you an apology, Marcus," she began, her gaze direct and unwavering. "Bradford has been intercepting my communications. It seems he's been shielding me from Foundation operations for some time. I've been unwell, early-stage Parkinson's, and Bradford convinced the board I needed reduced responsibilities." Marcus thought of his grandmother, of the insidious way age could be manipulated, a vulnerability exploited. "I understand about cognitive decline. My grandma has dementia." Margaret's eyes sharpened, a flash of irritation. "I don't have cognitive decline, young man. I have a motor disorder. There's a significant difference which Bradford has deliberately blurred to consolidate his control." She continued, her voice gaining momentum. "The Foundation was my husband's legacy. He built his fortune from nothing and wanted to create opportunities for deserving students regardless of background. In recent years, I've noticed our scholarship recipients becoming less diverse." She opened her tablet, showing Marcus a spreadsheet. "Look at this. 5 years ago, 43% of our recipients were students of color. Last year, 9%. This year, just 1. And he's the son of a prominent donor." Marcus wasn't surprised, just weary. "No offense, Mrs. Calloway, but this is how the world works. People like me can do everything right and still lose to a rigged system. That doesn't make it acceptable, Margaret said firmly, her jaw set. My husband and I built this foundation to fight against such systems, not perpetuate them. As they talked, Marcus noticed a vintage Leica camera in Margaret's elegant bag. She caught his glance and smiled, a rare, genuine expression. You have a good eye. Edward, my husband, was a photographer before he became a businessman. This was his first professional camera. I carry it to feel close to him. The simple humanity of this gesture, a glimpse into her personal grief, touched Marcus. When Margaret mentioned her late husband's love of jazz, Marcus shared his own passion for music, including his treasured collection of vinyl records inherited from his father, one of the few tangible links he had left to him. Do you have any Coltrane? Margaret asked, her eyes lighting up with shared enthusiasm. A love supreme, Marcus confirmed, a proud smile gracing his lips. Original pressing. My dad bought it from a South Side record store that closed in the 90s. Edward would have appreciated that, Margaret mused. He believed music and photography were windows into truth, ways of seeing beyond surface appearances to what really matters. Marcus considered her words, the deeper meaning behind them. Is that why you started the foundation? To see beyond appearances? Margaret's expression grew serious, her gaze unwavering. Edward grew up poor in Appalachia, white, but poor. He understood what it meant to have doors closed based on circumstances beyond your control. The foundation was his attempt to open those doors for others. She paused, her voice tinged with regret. What Bradford has done, quietly shifting our focus to privileged students, betrays everything Edward stood for. What can you do about it? Marcus asked, a flicker of hope, however faint, stirring within him. More than Bradford realizes, Margaret replied, a steely glint in her eyes. I'd like to offer you a job, Marcus. I need an assistant I can trust, someone outside Bradford's influence, someone who stops to help lost old women in the rain when everyone else walks by. The position would pay enough to cover his family's rent and his sister's plane ticket, with hours that would allow him to attend community college part-time. Why me? Marcus asked skeptically, the echoes of Bradford's dismissal still fresh. You don't even know me. Margaret set down her teacup, her gaze unwavering. Character reveals itself in moments of inconvenience, Marcus. You sacrificed something precious to help a stranger. Before Marcus could respond, Bradford appeared at their table, his expression thunderous, a dark cloud in the sunlit cafe. Grandmother, we've been looking everywhere for you. Your doctor appointment was an hour ago. Margaret didn't flinch, her composure unyielding. I don't have a doctor appointment today, Bradford. I'm interviewing Marcus for a position as my personal assistant. Bradford's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing a flash of naked contempt as he glanced at Marcus. That's out of the question. The board would never approve such an appointment without proper vetting, background checks. The board doesn't approve my personal staff, Margaret interrupted, her voice a whip crack. And since I'm still the majority shareholder of Callaway Enterprises, neither do you. A tense silence followed, thick with unspoken power struggles. Bradford composed himself with visible effort, his smile a brittle facade. Of course, grandmother. I'm only concerned for your welfare. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. Marcus starts Monday. After Bradford reluctantly left, the air still crackling with his barely suppressed fury, Margaret turned serious. You should know what you're walking into, Marcus. My grandson resents anyone he perceives as coming between him and his inheritance. By accepting this position, you're making an enemy of a powerful man." Marcus thought of his mother working double shifts, his brother in prison, his sister's deferred dreams, and his own crushed hopes. "With all due respect, Mrs. Calloway," he said, his voice firm, "people like Bradford have been against me my entire life. At least this time, the fight comes with a paycheck." Margaret nodded, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "One more thing. I'd like you to sign this." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a non-disclosure agreement, standard for high-level corporate positions, but paperclipped to it was something else, a Harvard acceptance letter with Marcus's name on it. "I made some calls," Margaret said simply, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Your academic record speaks for itself. The tuition will come from my personal accounts, not the foundation. Bradford can't touch that." Marcus stared at the letter, unable to speak, the words swirling before his eyes. Too good to be true. "Your kindness cost you a chance at your dreams," Margaret continued, her voice softening. "I'm merely restoring what should have been yours in the first place. But the job offer stands regardless. I genuinely need someone I can trust." That evening, Marcus sat with his family around their small dinner table, the Harvard acceptance letter and job offer laid out before them like sacred texts. His mother wept silently, tears of joy and relief mingling with years of unspoken worry. Zora, her scientific mind temporarily forgotten, jumped up and down, a whirlwind of pure elation. Even Grandma Elise seemed to understand, patting his hand repeatedly, a rare moment of clarity piercing through the fog. "I knew," she murmured, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "I always knew you'd find a way." Later, as Marcus got ready for bed, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your acceptance and new position. Enjoy them while they last. -B." The threat couldn't have been clearer, a venomous whisper in the quiet night. But Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, something resilient and unbreakable. Resolve. He had spent his life fighting harder than his peers for every opportunity, every scrap of progress. Bradford Calloway, with all his inherited privilege and power, had never had to fight for anything. As Marcus passed his grandmother's room, he heard her talking to herself, a symptom of her dementia. But tonight, her words, though rambling, struck him with a profound truth. "They think kindness is weakness," she murmured. "That's how you know they've never really needed it." He paused, absorbing the quiet wisdom, then continued to his room, where he carefully placed the Harvard letter on his desk beside a framed photo of his father. Whatever Bradford had planned, Marcus knew one thing for certain. Underestimating him would be Bradford's first and most significant mistake. Marcus had been working for Margaret for 3 weeks when the first tremor of trouble appeared. While meticulously organizing her correspondence, a task that required both diligence and discretion, he uncovered several letters from the Foundation's legal team. These communiques, intercepted by Bradford, outlined burgeoning concerns about the shifting demographics of scholarship recipients and potential violations of the Foundation's core charter. When Marcus brought these to Margaret's attention, she was visibly shaken, her usual composure momentarily fracturing. "This is worse than I thought," she murmured, her voice tight with a newfound urgency. "Bradford isn't just changing the Foundation's direction. He's actively subverting its legal mandate." Together, they began a quiet, clandestine investigation into the Foundation's records. Margaret, with a trust born of Marcus's unwavering integrity, granted him access to the digital archives using her executive credentials. What they unearthed was a chilling tapestry of deception. Bradford had been systematically redirecting substantial funds from diversity initiatives established by his grandfather's explicit vision to pet projects and organizations overtly connected to his wealthy circle of friends. "This is fraud," Marcus said, staring at the screen, the weight of the evidence pressing down on him. "He's embezzling from a charitable foundation." Margaret's face hardened, etched with a deep disappointment that transcended mere anger. "It's his character, too." Bradford was always entitled, born into wealth he never earned, but I never imagined he'd betray his grandfather's legacy this way. Their painstaking investigation was abruptly interrupted when Bradford appeared unannounced at Margaret's office, his presence a dark storm cloud. He eyed Marcus coldly, a flicker of resentment in his gaze, before addressing his grandmother. "The quarterly board meeting has been moved up. It's tomorrow morning instead of next week." Margaret, ever the strategist, didn't miss a beat. "That's unusually short notice." Bradford offered a thin, unsettling smile. "Several board members had scheduling conflicts. I took the liberty of resolving them." After he left, the heavy scent of his expensive cologne lingering in the air, Margaret turned to Marcus, her eyes narrowed in a silent warning. "He knows we're digging. This is his move to outflank us before we can build our case." That evening, a text arrived from an unknown number on Marcus's phone. "Washington, $50,000 cash if you walk away from Callaway now. Consider it severance. This offer expires at midnight." Marcus showed Margaret, who wasn't surprised. "Bradford is testing your price. Everyone has one in his worldview." Marcus thought about what that money could do for his family. Clear their crushing debts, secure stable housing, ensure his sister's education. The temptation, a seductive whisper, was potent. But he also thought about his deferred Harvard acceptance, waiting for him in the fall, and how Margaret had restored his future when Bradford had tried so ruthlessly to steal it. "I don't have a price," Marcus told her, the words firm, imbued with a newfound strength. "Not for doing what's right." Margaret smiled, a genuine warmth returning to her eyes. "I was hoping you'd say that." "Because I've made a decision." She revealed that she had been meticulously recording all her interactions with Bradford, a quiet, methodical documentation of his attempts to undermine her authority by falsely claiming she was cognitively impaired. She had also been gathering irrefutable evidence of his financial misconduct. "Tomorrow," she declared, her voice resolute, "I'm going to call for a vote of no confidence and have Bradford removed from the foundation. With the evidence we've gathered, the board will have no choice but to act." As Marcus left Margaret's penthouse that night, a sleek black car pulled alongside him. The window lowered, revealing Bradford Callaway's predatory smile. "Get in, Washington. We need to talk." "I'll pass," Marcus replied, continuing to walk, refusing to be intimidated. Bradford called after him, his voice laced with venom. "She's using you, you know. My grandmother collects people like charity projects. When she's done performing her white savior routine, she'll discard you." Marcus stopped, the words sparking a deeper curiosity. "Is that what happened to you?" Bradford's face darkened, his composure cracking. "You think you know her?" "You know nothing. My grandfather built Callaway Enterprises from nothing. My father expanded it. I've spent my life preparing to lead it. Then grandmother decided the family legacy should go to funding scholarships for people who haven't earned their place. People who haven't earned their place, Marcus repeated, a cold steel in his voice. Like me. If the shoe fits, Bradford retorted, his disdain palpable. Marcus stood his ground, a quiet dignity in his posture. Mrs. Calloway showed me the original foundation charter. Your grandfather grew up poor in Appalachia. The foundation was created specifically to help students without advantages get opportunities they earned through hard work. Students exactly like me. Bradford's mask of civility slipped completely, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. My final offer? $100,000 cash tonight, or you'll regret choosing the wrong side. As Bradford's car pulled away, leaving Marcus alone in the cold night, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Margaret Calloway, 78, hospitalized after fall at home. Marcus rushed to Chicago Memorial, a sense of dread tightening in his stomach, only to be stopped at the ICU desk. Family only, the nurse said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. As he argued with hospital security, Marcus spotted Bradford emerging from Margaret's room, speaking intently with a doctor. When Bradford saw Marcus, he walked over, a satisfied, chilling smile playing on his lips. Unfortunately, my grandmother has taken a turn for the worse. Severe confusion. Possible stroke. The doctors say she's not competent to make decisions. As her only living relative, I'll be taking over her affairs effective immediately. He handed Marcus an envelope. Your employment is terminated. Security will escort you out. As Marcus was led away, a helpless rage building within him, he caught a glimpse through the window of Margaret's room. She was awake, clearly agitated, her eyes wide with a desperate plea, trying to communicate with a nurse who was adjusting her IV. Something was very wrong, and Bradford was unmistakably behind it. The next morning, the hammer fell. Marcus discovered his access to Calloway Tower had been revoked. His company phone and email no longer worked. Bradford had moved with ruthless efficiency, systematically erasing Marcus's connection to Margaret and the foundation. When he tried calling Margaret's personal number, a hospital administrator answered, explaining that Mrs. Calloway's condition had deteriorated, and she had been moved to a private facility for specialized care. No, they could not disclose the location. No, they could not pass on messages. Yes, her grandson now had power of attorney. Marcus felt a helpless rage building, a suffocating despair. He knew Margaret wasn't confused or impaired. They had spent hours reviewing complex financial documents just yesterday. Whatever was happening was Bradford's doing, a calculated maneuver to seize control. Without his job at Calloway, Marcus's family faced an immediate financial crisis, the precarious balance of their lives shattered. His mother found him updating his resume at the kitchen table, her eyes clouded with concern. Baby, what happened? I thought things were going so well. Marcus couldn't bring himself to tell her everything, the hope of Harvard now seeming a cruel mirage in the stark light of their reality. It didn't work out, Mum. Politics. Loretta sat beside him, her hands, though tired, steady. Politics is just another word for people abusing power. What are you going to do about it? Before he could answer, there was a knock at their door. 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Division stood in the hallway, their faces grim. Marcus Washington, we need to ask you some questions about unauthorized access to Calloway Foundation accounts and missing funds. His mother paled beside him. My son hasn't stolen anything in his life. The female detective's expression remained neutral, unyielding. Ma'am, we're investigating the transfer of $247,000 from the Foundation's emergency fund to an offshore account. The transfer was initiated using your son's login credentials. Marcus was stunned. That's impossible. I never had access to Foundation accounts. We have digital evidence indicating otherwise, the male detective said. We'll need you to come with us. At the police station, the full, insidious extent of Bradford's plan unraveled before Marcus. Not only had he been framed for embezzlement, but Bradford had also filed a restraining order against him on Margaret's behalf, claiming Marcus was stalking his grandmother and attempting to manipulate her into changing her will. Do you understand how this looks? The detective asked, his voice devoid of sympathy. A young man ingratiates himself with a wealthy elderly woman, gains access to her accounts, then transfers money right before she's hospitalized. The DA is already talking felony charges. Through the two-way mirror, Marcus saw Bradford arrive at the station, playing the role of concerned grandson perfectly as he conferred with the officers. The public defender assigned to Marcus was overwhelmed and skeptical. They have digital evidence, login records, and multiple witnesses saying you were obsessed with the Calloway fortune. Bradford Calloway, he explained, had offered to drop charges if Marcus signed a confession and agreed to never contact his grandmother again. I didn't do this, Marcus insisted, his voice raw with frustration. Mrs. Calloway was investigating Bradford for misappropriating foundation funds. He's framing me to cover his tracks. The lawyer sighed, rubbing his temples. That's a serious accusation against one of Chicago's most prominent citizens. Do you have any proof? Marcus thought of the documents he and Margaret had uncovered, all stored on Calloway servers he no longer had access to. The recordings Margaret mentioned, where were they kept? Her personal phone? Her computer? All now controlled by Bradford. Nothing I can access, he admitted, the words a bitter admission of defeat. Then I strongly suggest you consider the deal. First-time offender. You might get probation instead of prison time. Marcus thought of his brother Dion, who took a plea bargain for a crime he didn't commit, because fighting would have meant risking years instead of months behind bars. Is this how the cycle continues? He wondered. An inescapable trap. Released on bail that drained his mother's meager savings, Marcus returned home to find an eviction notice on their door. The landlord's patience had run out. They had 72 hours to vacate. That night, his sister Zora crawled into his bed, just as she did when they were younger, and there were thunderstorms, her small hand finding his. You didn't do it, she said, her voice clear, certain. It wasn't a question. No. Then we'll prove it. Marcus hugged her tightly, the fragile hope she offered a small comfort. It's not that simple, Z. People like Bradford Calloway don't lose to people like us. That's what they want you to think, she replied with the fierce conviction of a 12-year-old who hadn't yet learned to accept injustice. But Mrs. Calloway believed in you, and so do I. The next morning brought the final devastating blow. Harvard University emailed to rescind his acceptance due to the pending criminal investigation. The dream that had been so miraculously restored was now once again shattered. As Marcus helped his mother pack their meager belongings, preparing to move in with his aunt in an even more cramped apartment, his phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Marcus, it's Dr. Ella Chen, Margaret's personal physician. Something is very wrong. Bradford won't let me see her. Meet me at Carter Park, 3 p.m. Come alone. Marcus stared at the message. A lifeline or another trap? His mother noticed his expression. What is it? He hesitated, then showed her the text. It might be nothing. It might be another trap. Loretta read it twice, then looked him in the eye, her gaze unwavering. Or it might be the truth trying to find its way out. Sometimes, baby, that's all it takes. One person brave enough to speak up. Marcus pocketed his phone, a decision made, a flicker of resolve rekindled. "I need to go, Mom." "You'll make it back," she interrupted firmly, her voice imbued with a fierce maternal conviction. "And you'll bring that woman's truth with you." Marcus arrived at Carter Park 30 minutes early, scanning for any sign he was being watched. Bradford had proven himself both ruthless and thorough. This could easily be another trap. Dr. Chen arrived precisely at 3 o'clock, a petite Asian woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner that inspired immediate trust. She got straight to the point. "Margaret Calloway does not have dementia, stroke damage, or any cognitive impairment whatsoever. I've been her doctor for 15 years. Bradford is having her heavily sedated at Lakeside Wellness Center under the care of a doctor who owes his career to Calloway money." Marcus absorbed this, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to click into place. "Can you help me see her?" Dr. Chen shook her head. "Bradford has restricted visitors to family only, with himself as the sole arbiter of who qualifies. But that's not why I contacted you." She handed Marcus a small leather case. Inside was an antique key and a handwritten note in Margaret's elegant script. "Storage unit number 47, Secure Holdings, Michigan Avenue. The truth is there if I can't speak it." "She gave me this the day after you started working for her," Dr. Chen explained, her voice low and urgent. "Said if anything happened to her, I should wait 3 days, then give it to you. She called it her insurance policy." Within the hour, Marcus stood before a climate-controlled storage unit in a high-security facility, the antique key a weighty promise in his hand. The key worked. Inside he found a single item, Margaret's vintage Leica camera. Confused, Marcus examined it closely, turning it over in his hands. The camera had been subtly modified. It wasn't just a camera, but a sophisticated recording device. He found a memory card hidden in a custom compartment, a digital breadcrumb trail. When he viewed the files at a nearby internet cafe, Marcus understood Margaret's brilliance, her foresight, her quiet, unwavering determination. She had been secretly recording Bradford for months. The camera, an innocuous accessory for an elderly woman with sentimental attachments, had captured damning evidence. Bradford admitting to manipulating scholarship selections based on race. Bradford discussing drugging Margaret to make her appear confused at board meetings. Bradford explicitly plotting with the foundation's CFO to divert funds. Bradford instructing his assistant to intercept Marcus's scholarship application. Most damning of all was footage from the night of Margaret's fall. Bradford entering her penthouse, their heated argument, and Bradford, in a fit of rage, pushing her when she threatened to expose him. Marcus immediately copied the files to a secure cloud account, then called Dr. Chen, his voice tight with urgency. "I have evidence Bradford assaulted Mrs. Calloway and is embezzling from the foundation, but he's got me framed for financial crimes, and no one's going to take my word over his." "You need leverage," Dr. Chen said pragmatically, "and allies with power." Marcus thought for a moment, his mind racing. "The board meeting. Has it happened yet?" "It's tomorrow morning," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Bradford delayed it, claiming Margaret needed medical assessment before any decisions could be made. If I could get these recordings to the board members before the meeting, Bradford would make sure you never got within 100 yards of that building," Dr. Chen finished, her voice decisive. "But I can. I'm still officially Margaret's physician of record." Together, they formulated a daring plan. Dr. Chen would request an emergency meeting with the board to discuss Margaret's medical condition, citing her ethical obligation as Margaret's doctor. Marcus would provide her with copies of the most damning evidence. There was one more call Marcus needed to make. He reached out to Aisha Johnson, a tenacious reporter who covered financial news for the Tribune and had written critical pieces about corporate philanthropy in the past. He offered her an exclusive story. Corruption at one of Chicago's most prestigious foundations, a narrative too explosive to ignore. The next morning, as the Callaway Foundation board assembled, Bradford felt a surge of unshakable confidence. He had neutralized his grandmother, framed Marcus, and was prepared to consolidate his control over the family empire. He even wore his grandfather's custom-made platinum watch for the occasion, a symbol of the legacy he felt so utterly entitled to claim. When Dr. Chen requested to address the board regarding Margaret's condition, Bradford tried to block her, a sneer on his face, but the board chair, an old friend of Margaret's, overruled him. "Members of the board," Dr. Chen began, her voice clear and resonant, "I come to you with grave concerns about both Mrs. Callaway's current situation and the Foundation's integrity." Bradford interrupted, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "Dr. Chen no longer has authority to—" "Actually," came a voice from the doorway, strong and unwavering, "my doctor speaks with my full authority." Margaret Callaway stood in the entrance, supported by Marcus. She was pale, but clear-eyed and radiating an unyielding determination. The boardroom erupted in confusion, a cacophony of murmurs. Bradford went white, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Grandmother, you should be resting." "Your condition, my condition," Margaret said coldly, her gaze fixed on her grandson, "is righteous anger, Bradford. Nothing more." Dr. Chen then explained how she and Marcus had located Margaret at Lakeside Wellness Center and, using her medical authority, ordered a reduction in Margaret's medication. Once clear-headed, Margaret had signed forms revoking Bradford's power of attorney. "But that's not all," Margaret continued, her voice gaining strength, echoing through the stunned room. She nodded to Marcus, who activated a laptop connected to the boardroom's display system. "My assistant has evidence you all need to see." As the recordings played, Bradford's carefully constructed world imploded. The board watched in stunned silence as Bradford admitted to racial discrimination in scholarship selections, detailed financial fraud, and in the most shocking footage was seen assaulting his grandmother. Bradford lunged for the door, but security guards, alerted by Dr. Chen's earlier call, blocked his exit. "This is a setup," Bradford snarled, his face contorted in a mask of primal fury. "He's manipulated these recordings. He points at Marcus. This street kid has corrupted my grandmother, turned her against her own blood for money." Margaret stepped forward, her voice ringing with a newfound authority, a quiet thunder. "Blood? Let me tell you about blood, Bradford. Your grandfather was born to a black mother and a white father in 1937 Mississippi. He was light-skinned enough to pass as white, which he did to survive and build this company, but he never forgot where he came from, or the opportunities denied to those who couldn't hide their heritage." The boardroom fell silent, the revelation hanging heavy in the air. "Why do you think he established the foundation with such emphasis on helping minority students? Why do you think our family charter explicitly prohibits discrimination? You've been dismantling your own grandfather's attempt to right historical wrongs, Bradford. You've betrayed not just me, but your own heritage." Bradford stared at his grandmother in shock, his face drained of color. "That's impossible. Grandfather was white. Father was white. I am white." "You are a quarter black, Bradford," Margaret said softly, the truth a quiet, undeniable force. "Your father knew. He chose to bury that knowledge, to embrace only the privileged side of his identity. But your grandfather left me very specific instructions about the Foundation's mission precisely because he understood both worlds, both sides of that divide." The board members sat in stunned silence as Margaret turned to Marcus. "Show them the final recording, please." Marcus played the last file of video Edward Calloway had made before his death 15 years ago, intended specifically for the Foundation board. In it, the elderly Edward, his voice filled with both regret and hope, revealed his mixed-race heritage and his lifelong commitment to creating opportunities for talented students, regardless of background. "My fortune was built on the privilege of appearing white," Edward said in the recording, his gaze direct and earnest. "The Foundation is my attempt to extend that privilege to those who haven't been granted it by accident of birth." As the video ended, the board chair, a man visibly shaken, cleared his throat. "Bradford Calloway, in light of this evidence, I am calling for an immediate vote to remove you from all positions within the Calloway Foundation and to refer these matters to the proper authorities." The vote was unanimous. 3 months later, Marcus stood on Harvard's historic campus, the crisp autumn air a stark contrast to the humid Chicago summers, still hardly believing he was truly there. The criminal charges against him were dropped when Bradford, in a desperate bid to avoid a longer prison sentence for his financial crimes and elder abuse, confessed to framing him as part of a plea deal. Bradford Calloway would serve 5 years in federal prison. The news coverage was extensive, with Aisha Johnson's expose leading to broader investigations of discrimination in philanthropic organizations nationwide, a ripple effect of justice. Marcus's phone buzzed with a video call from home. His sister Zora appeared on screen, wearing an MIT summer program t-shirt, her smile radiant, almost blinding. "How's my favorite Harvard man?" she teased, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Still getting used to it," Marcus admitted, panning his phone to show her the historic buildings around him, the ancient stones humming with centuries of learning. "How's MIT treating you?" "I got into the advanced track. Dr. Rivera says I have exceptional aptitude for biomedical engineering." Her expression, usually so bright, turned momentarily serious. "Mom wanted me to remind you about Sunday dinner. Margaret's coming, too." Since the boardroom showdown, Margaret had become like family, a wise matriarch figure whose presence was both comforting and inspiring. She had helped them find a new apartment in a better neighborhood, a home filled with light and promise, and established a trust for Zora's education, ensuring her genius would never be hampered by circumstance. More importantly, she had tirelessly advocated for prison reform that resulted in Dion's early release and the expungement of his record, a second chance born of hope and advocacy. "Tell Mom I wouldn't miss it," Marcus said, his heart full, "and tell Dion his big brother needs help moving into the dorm next weekend." After they hung up, Marcus headed to his first advisory meeting with Dr. Richardson, the neurology department chair. As he waited outside the office, he overheard Dr. Richardson speaking to another faculty member. "The Washington boy is interesting. Compelling background, perfect academics. Grandmother has dementia, apparently. He wants to specialize in neurodegenerative disorders." The other professor responded, a hint of skepticism in his voice. Another diversity admission. He earned his place, Doctor, Richardson said firmly, a quiet assertiveness in his tone. And if his application essay is any indication, he'll make us proud. Marcus knocked and entered with a confidence he wouldn't have possessed 6 months ago, a quiet strength that had been forged in the fires of adversity. Dr. Richardson greeted him warmly. Marcus, I was just telling my colleague about your interest in neurodegenerative disease research. We have a first-year position open in our lab, if you're interested. Absolutely, Marcus said, his enthusiasm genuine. My grandmother's condition inspired me, but recent events have shown me how much work remains in understanding cognitive decline versus pharmaceutical effects. They discussed the position, and Dr. Richardson mentioned it came with a stipend. Not much, I'm afraid. Most students find they need family support to manage. That won't be a problem, Marcus explained, a subtle smile playing on his lips. I've been named co-chair of the Callaway Foundation's new medical research initiative. Part of our mission is supporting students researching treatments for conditions affecting underserved communities. Dr. Richardson's eyebrows rose in surprise. That's unusual for a first-year undergraduate. So was everything else that happened this year, Marcus said, his smile widening. But Mrs. Callaway believes positions of responsibility should go to those who've demonstrated character, not just credentials. As Marcus left the meeting, he passed a bulletin board where his own face looked back at him, part of a feature on the incoming class. 6 months ago, he'd been fighting just to be seen, to be deemed worthy of opportunity. Now he had become visible in ways he never imagined, a testament to resilience and unwavering kindness. His phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Board approved your proposal unanimously. The Edward Callaway Memorial Scholarship for Neurological Research is officially funded. Well done, Co-Chair Washington. Sometimes the reward for kindness, he reflected, wasn't just getting what you deserved. It was the profound power to ensure others did too. 5 years later, Marcus stood at a podium in the grand renovated Callaway Foundation headquarters, addressing a room full of eager scholarship recipients and their families. At 23, he was now the youngest ever executive director of the foundation, appointed after completing his accelerated pre-med program with honors, his journey a beacon of what was possible. When I was 17, I made a choice between helping a stranger and pursuing my own dreams, he told the audience, his voice clear and resonant, carrying the weight of experience. What I couldn't have known then was that kindness isn't a detour from success. Sometimes it's the most direct path. In the front row, his family watched proudly. His mother, Loretta, now enrolled in nursing school herself, her own dreams finally realized. His grandmother, Elise, whose condition had stabilized under new treatment protocols Marcus had helped develop. His brother, Dayon, who, having turned his life around, now managed the Foundation's Second Chance initiative for formerly incarcerated individuals, a living testament to redemption, and his sister, Zora, a junior at MIT with 3 patents already to her name, her brilliance shining ever brighter. Margaret Callaway sat beside them, using a cane, but still sharp as ever, her eyes twinkling with satisfaction. She caught Marcus's eye and gave him a subtle, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory. Today, each of you is receiving more than financial support, Marcus continued, his gaze sweeping across the diverse group of students before him. You're receiving a challenge. To remember that your success isn't measured solely by your achievements, but by the hands you extend to others along the way. He smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from him, at the most qualified cohort in the Foundation's history, selected through the blind review process he had implemented to eliminate bias and ensure true meritocracy. It was a testament to the enduring power of compassion, integrity, and the ripple effect of a single act of kindness, echoing through generations, opening doors that once seemed permanently closed.